Hello. Hi. Welcome or welcome back to the Authentically Attuned podcast. I am your host. My name is Esther. And before I begin, I just want to say welcome to my new subscribers on YouTube. So I don't know where you're listening right now, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on Substack, but I also post these episodes on YouTube. And since my last episode, I have gained almost 17 new followers on my YouTube channel. And I know that might not seem like a lot to some people, but I truly appreciate every single person that has subscribed since my last episode, because my goal in posting these episodes talking specifically about DL men, like, this is very personal to me. This entire podcast is very personal to me, but especially this topic. And I hope to reach people, women, men, people who have personally experienced this same thing that I experienced. A relationship with a man who has some sexual identity confusion going on. And the reason that this is one of my main goals is because I know firsthand how draining, how confusing, how life-shaking, I'm not going to say shattering, because I truly don't believe that this situation has to shatter your life or ruin your life. I didn't let it happen to me, so I don't believe it has to be that way, but I understand that it is very destabilizing to go through this. I personally am still healing, and I don't want to speak from a position of someone who is on the other side completely. I want to be very transparent about the fact that I'm still heavily affected by this every day. It has been since January 2024. So I broke up with him in January 2024. At the time I'm recording this, it is August 2025. And my nervous system is still completely a mess. I have to do a lot of regulation, self-regulation, self-talk, heavy processing. I have to be very honest with myself every day to show up and to accept my reality. So I just hope that these episodes bring comfort to other women and men who are taking this one day at a time, just like me, and trying to understand and trying to work through the issues that you have personally that could have attracted this type of relationship into your life. So with that being said, I want to also say to my new subscribers and to my OG subscribers and to anyone listening right now that I do not want you to just take my word for it. When it comes to DL men, when it comes to toxic family, toxic relationships, I don't want you to listen to my episodes and just hear what I'm saying as if I know everything. That's not my goal. I actually want to inspire you to trust your intuition, because that's what got me here. That's what keeps me showing up and keeps me learning and about this topic and about myself and processing. So I hope that my words can just give you confirmation for things that you've already felt, things that you intuitively know are true, but you just have not been able to maybe place a name to these feelings or to these situations, experiences that you've had, or maybe you don't know what direction to look in to research more, to understand more for yourself. So I hope that my words can do that and help you have a place to start. Okay, so in this episode, we are going to be talking about what the difference is between a man who is gay and in the closet and a man who is down low and hiding his sexuality. I am really excited to talk about this because I've noticed there is a lot of confusing opinions about this, specifically from women. I think I'm mostly surprised at how women respond to people who talk about this topic. So, for example, my main observation has been through watching a content creator named the DL Whisperer. If you're watching my videos, I am almost like 95% sure you already know who that is. But if you don't know who the DL Whisperer is, he is a man who I'm gonna speak very truthfully here. I don't know whether he is gay or bisexual. Because I have seen in some comments and even in a podcast episode where he was featured that he mentioned something about being gay, but I've seen in comments where he has said he's bisexual. So I don't know. But he does not identify as a straight man. And his platform is basically about exposing the DL culture and talking about DL men because he has had a lot of experiences with men who are on the down low and claim to be straight. And one thing I have noticed in his comments that people regularly say to him is that, basically what he's doing is wrong in terms of exposing these people. Some people say it's because he's putting himself in danger, and some people say it's because it's not right. It's nobody's business to know whether these men are gay or not, blah, blah, blah. He's encouraging homophobia in Black women, things like that. And at first, this really upset me because I was like, do these people not understand? Like, this doesn't make sense. You're saying he's putting his life in danger to talk about this, which means you acknowledge that these men are really dangerous. So what is not clicking?
What's not clicking? What's not clicking? He doesn't know how to treat women. He's like a dog.
But now I see that what I think is truly happening when I try to look at this and look at the people who make comments like this, especially the women, when I try to look at them with a sympathetic or, an empathetic outlook and try to put myself in their shoes, the only thing I can assume is happening is that they are confusing DL men with men who are in the closet. And that's not something I ever really considered before, like to try to really define the difference. Because I personally see it as a very obvious thing. But trying to put it into words for this episode has really showed me like why it's important for us to talk about this difference, because it's kind of a small line. Like, what I realize is this really is not a black and white issue. I see that now, and I think there is a lot of nuance. There's like a really thin line. You know how they say there's a thin line between love and hate when it comes to gay in the closet men and down low men? There's also a very thin line between it. So I think it's important to have conversations like this to zoom in on that line and actually define it so that women who are looking to be in committed relationships with men who are straight can, at the very least, because I think this is the starting point, be able to tell the ones who are not, whether he's gay or in the closet, or whether he's just sexually confused and looking to use you as an outlet for that. So let's get started. To begin, I just want to say I wrote some things down for the first time. All my other episodes so far, I haven't written anything, but this, I felt like I needed to have some sort of map to outline what I'm gonna say. So bear with me. I don't want this to sound like a class, but I might need to set it up that way just so we can stay on topic. because that's hard for me sometimes. The first thing that I want to say is that my personal theory when it comes to DL men in general is that they do not actually want to be with men. And I talk a little bit more about that in my episode titled The Truth About DL Men, Signs and How to Avoid Them. That's the first episode in this podcast that I did about DL men. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, please feel free to check that out either after you finish this one, or you can pause right now and go listen to it, but you have to promise that you will come back and finish this one. So yes, I think that's a very important thing to point out, is that I don't personally believe that these men actually want to be in relationships, publicly open, loving relationships with other men. And the reason, my number one reason for not believing this, is because not only the DL Whisperers content, but other gay men who have experienced relationships with DL men, trans women who have experienced relationships with DL men, what they describe in the behavior, how these men treat them, in my opinion, sounds almost identical to the way that they treat the women that they are, sneaking around, like the women that they're cheating with these men on. I don't know if I said that right, but the women, they treat these men, the gay and trans women, the gay men and trans women that they sneak around with, they treat them identical almost to the same way that they treat their women partners. That is an important thing to notice, because it just shows me that it's not about the gender. In my opinion, these men see relationships as a place to basically exert power, in comparison to how I see gay men who are in the closet, whether it's depicted in movies or even real life situations where women end up being married to gay men and then later find out he's gay. So I see that in these situations, gay men who are in the closet, I believe that they do have a longing, they do truly have a desire to be with other men. But just similarly to the DL men, I think that's the one thing they do have in common, is that they feel pressure from society, pressure from their environment, to feel like being gay they cannot reach the same level they want to be in society with being gay and openly being in a relationship with a man. Now, although at this point, it might seem like, what is the difference between these two then, right? What I see is that in the relationships where there's a gay man and he's in the closet, I think the biggest difference is that the gay man usually, in my opinion, does not hate women. He can still form bonds with women, even if it's just friendship, even if it's just emotional on the level of bonding as a friend. He can still create that bond with a woman, whereas DL men cannot. And I think that is a huge distinction, because also, like I talk about in my Truth About DL Men episode, I mentioned that the reason I believe that DL men cannot be in a relationship with a woman, a healthy relationship, is because they resent women, they hate women, they have fear or a lot of resentment towards femininity and the woman gender, the female gender, and it's usually rooted in their experience with their mother. So this is not to say that gay men all have perfect relationships with their mother or don't experience this. I do believe there are some gay men who also don't like women and resent women, but I am under the impression that those are the gay men who, those gay men are not pretending to be with women. And I'm also under the impression too that those gay men are more leaning towards the DL side than the actual gay side. I know it's confusing, guys. I feel crazy, but there's a spectrum in my eyes. And if the spectrum is cut from one end to the other and then there's a middle, I believe DL is in the middle, fully gay is on the right side on one end, and then straight is on the other. So I do believe gay men who are openly gay, who also show cattiness and resentment and, just weird defensive energy towards women and femininity, it's not just that they're gay, they just are catty and they don't like women, they're jealous of women. They are more closer to the DL side of the spectrum than fully on the gay side. But that's a whole nother episode. So we're not going to get too much into that. I'm going to try to focus in this episode to talk about actually gay men and men who are confused, which is, in my opinion, DL men. So, again, I believe that the gay men can actually form bonds with women. And I also believe that this is partially because my definition of a gay man who's in the closet is a man who still believes he's gay. Even if he's dating women, he knows he's gay. This is not something he's questioning in his mind. If anything, he's trying to figure out whether or not he actually wants to live life as a gay man, or he wants to pretend to not be gay for the rest of his life. So that is what I see as a gay man who's in the closet. He knows he's gay. He just is afraid to live out in the open and be himself. But he himself has an awareness that he is gay, that he's attracted to men, or at the very least bisexual. So now, when it comes to DL men, I think one of the main differences is that he himself either is not sure or is in complete denial about the fact that he is or could possibly be gay. So I'm going to repeat that because if you take anything away from this episode, I hope it's this. A gay man, in my opinion, a gay man who's in the closet knows he is gay. He is not in denial about that. He is actually intentionally hiding the fact that he is gay. A down low man, in my opinion, is a man that is in denial about the fact that he could possibly be or is gay or bisexual, and has no intention or possibly no ability to process and self-reflect to figure out whether he is or not, and instead goes through these experiments or he uses other people to try to figure out and understand himself rather than searching within himself to understand what's going on. So now that we got that out of the way, I think that is the most important thing to remember. And I'm going to tell you why I feel like this distinction matters and how it shows up and how they interact with women. So I believe that in relationships where a man is in the closet and he is gay and he knows it and he's pretending, these relationships are usually, I wouldn't say peaceful, but they are cohesive. They flow in a certain way. And I think that's because gay men who know they're gay usually are not envious of women. I'm not saying all of them aren't. Like I said, the spectrum, blah, 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 there are some who are. But men who are truly gay and they understand that they're gay I don't think they envy femininity. If anything, I think they probably envy women being able to be more open about that. But if I think they're inspired by femininity, and that's why they can relate to women and talk about certain things that women want to talk about, be patient with women in certain ways and things like that, learn from women, respect women, right? And so that's something that really, through processing this, was like almost a neon sign for me. Once I realized that, yeah, if he was gay, if he was in the closet, right, why would he not be like on his absolute best behavior to make sure that this relationship lasts, like I don't leave him, so that he can continue to have a beard and continue to live in this disguise? And that's when it clicked for me. I realized that he couldn't, like, his resentment, his own unresolved confusion and trauma is what makes the reactions, like how he responds to any threat, to me possibly, like, you know, cutting through his mask and his charade. If you listen to my last episode, a good example of this is him constantly telling me that, oh, maybe he needs a man. Whenever I would tell him he's acting like a little boy or he's not acting like a man, he would now try to project like, oh yeah, maybe I do need a man, maybe, like, you know, you're not strong enough for me, certain things like that, right? So it's almost like he can't help himself but to respond that way because he resents this, like, what he's hiding so much. Because if you notice in relationships and movies and things like that, I know I'm using movies only because this is something I think we all like understand. I'm not saying the movies are reality, but I'm sure you have also heard real life stories of women who have realized their husbands are gay, whether it's on YouTube, on social media, or it's someone you know in real life. But I've heard a lot of these stories, and I've also been around people who are in marriages like this that I'm not gonna say it's confirmed that their husband is gay, but I can see a difference where they usually have very pleasant lives. It's not like passionate or magnetic, but they seem like a lovely couple. The only issue these types of couples, women who are in relationships with gay men who are in the closet, have is usually in the bedroom. Maybe it's very boring, or maybe, you know, he likes to enter the house through the back door more often than using the front door, the main entrance. So I think things like that. But the type of level of psychological warfare and abuse that is talked about with relationships with DL men, completely different. So that's kind of one of the main things that shows me that there is a difference between these two types of men, even if it's like small. So this is one of the reasons why I get really triggered seeing people like opposed to the idea of exposing DL men. I get so triggered by it because it's like completely minimizing the damage that these men do to women and the men that they're with. They completely minimize the fact that this type of behavior that DL men show is harmful to others. It's not necessarily harmful to them, it protects them, but it's harmful to the people that they are showing this behavior to. And I don't know if the same can be said for gay men in the closet. I feel like I also get triggered because it's not fair to gay men who are in the closet and actually not trying to cause harm and truly trying to just not be a victim to like the way the society shames gay men. What I do know is that I personally have met more men like who are who I personally believe are gay. I don't know if they are or not, right? But if they are, one thing I notice in common with them is that they don't ever have a woman in their life. They're the type of men who are like single all the time, and maybe they only hang around girls, and there's rumors and speculation and gossip about whether they're gay, but you don't hear about this guy being a womanizer. You don't hear about him going around abusing women, and his last relationship ended like this or whatever. You don't hear those things about these types of guys. Those are the men in my eyes who are gay, possibly, and in the closet. And this is how I would assume that a gay man who is in the closet would behave. I think it's a completely different thing for a man to have this type of confusion or this type of feeling and then go and like terrorize a woman, pretend and lie and act like they are not experiencing this level of confusion inside of them, and then bring that into a woman's life and drag her into that. Because anyone who's experienced this type of relationship with a man who's sexually confused can confirm that what it feels like is you feel like you are being pulled into someone else's confusion. They want you to feel just as confused as they are. And that is something I personally just cannot excuse. I can't feel sympathy in the way where it's like, oh, well, they're just confused. So it makes sense that they're doing this. That's because that's what I hear when people say that, like, you shouldn't expose these people because they're not ready to come out the closet yet. It's like I hear people saying like, oh, it's okay for them to drag other people into their confusion because they're not ready to be honest with themselves yet. In what world is that right? That kind of leads me to my next topic, because this is where it gets interesting. I am starting to notice that a lot of women right now, there's like a pandemic of, I guess it's been years of this going on, of us complaining about leaving relationships with narcissistic men. And at the same time, there is a pandemic this has been around for a long time as well, of women leaving relationships and talking about past experiences with men who they believe are DL or who they know for sure are DL. I do not think this is a coincidence. And I do think that there is a direct link between DL men and narcissistic personality disorder. I'm not saying that every man who is a narcissist has sexual identity confusion issues, or I'm also not saying that every DL man is a narcissist, because nothing in life is really that simple, guys. This is why critical thinking is so important, because most things, if not everything in life, is really not black and white. So we're all individuals. We've all had very specific and distinct life experiences. Even if it's just one thing that happened to someone, their life and their reasons for their traumas are going to be different than the next person. So my main point, though, is I do believe that a lot of men who are DL are also narcissistic. And I think this is the root of the pattern of them trying to understand and figure out their sexuality through relationships with other innocent people. This is the root. It is because they are selfish. And I actually believe a lot of the same signs and behavioral things that DL people do, DL men exhibit, is the same as like what would be outlined for a narcissist in the DSM-5, which is like the official dictionary basically for mental health issues. I'm gonna go through some of these, what I've noticed. Like, I'm gonna show you some things I've noticed in comparison to the narcissistic personality disorder description and DL men behavior. One of the signs of narcissism is grandiosity. And this is something that DL men show a lot of when it comes to creating a masculine, super macho man persona. Men who are on the down low and dating women usually are very hyper masculine presenting, or they try to be. And a lot of them do see themselves as the prize and this ideal man. And the next sign for NPD is fantasies of power and idealization of like love. And I believe that, because this is something I've seen very consistent in my research, is that it seems that men who are men who are on the DL, they actually get off, like what makes them truly feel good and desired is feeling like they are masking well and getting away with presenting as a man. I believe this is really what keeps them chasing women. This validation that they get from being in a romantic relationship with a woman of, oh, my act must be working on her because she really loves me. She sees me like a man and she wants me, right? So I think that's a big part. And to answer the question of like, how do DL men still sleep with women though? If they're sexually confused, how come they can still have sex with women? It's because they get off on the fact that they are like getting away with this act, this charade. So the next thing, requires admiration. That's a sign of narcissistic personality disorder. And any woman who's been in a relationship with a man like this is why I think it's constantly being said, oh, men nowadays are looking to be chased. They want to be pursued and they're sassy. And yes, it's because we all recognize the same pattern in men like this. They want admiration from you. They want you to worship them. And when that's not received, they're usually triggered. And one example of this from my personal experience with the man that I was dating that was DL, in the beginning of our relationship, like I naturally am just like this. Like when I like someone, especially like intimately, I'm gonna give you compliments. I do that with my friends, all of that. So I always heavily complimented him. But about 4 or 5 months into the relationship, I noticed that wasn't something that I received from him. Like, yeah, he would give me compliments here and there, but definitely not like what I felt like was to the level that someone who, liked you would do. I wasn't used to that. Like, he just wasn't showing me through his words how he felt about how I looked. And I brought this up in a conversation with him. And what really surprised me is how he responded in the conversation. Essentially, he told me that he feels like, well, is it really that important? Is that like a deal breaker for me if he doesn't compliment me? And he feels like I get compliments all the time. And he's like basically afraid of my head getting big. Girl, like thinking about it now, I'm like, if a man would ever say this to me, I would open his car door, step out, and walk home. Like, which is what I should have done. But instead, I sat there and I talked it out with him, and I was upset, and I told him why that's not okay. And afterwards, he started giving me compliments. So I thought it was fixed. But this is the issue. The main thing that I should have taken away from that was that he has no issue with me complimenting him all the time and telling him what I thought about him all the time, but he felt like he didn't have to compliment me back. Like I should just know how he feels about me, and well, I get compliments from other people, so why is it important to me that I receive them from him? This is just to describe to you what it looks like when a man like requires admiration, but doesn't feel like he has to give it. So moving on. Entitlement. DL men are usually very entitled. They don't feel the need to reciprocate certain things, but they feel like you should give them certain things and show them love in a certain way. Again, the example I just used is a perfect example for that as well. So I can go on and on. I'm actually thinking about doing a separate video specifically about the comparison between DL men and narcissism, but I just wanted to give you some examples to show you what I'm trying to highlight here is that these men are narcissistic. The root of their desire to exploit both men and women to try to figure out their sexuality or whatever is rooted in narcissism, is rooted in entitlement, is rooted in self-fulfillment, is rooted in gaining admiration. Like, it's rooted in self for them. This is why they're so dangerous. This is why this is the type of man who would take someone's life simply because that person is trying to expose them. So this is one of the main differences between a DL man and a gay man who's in the closet. A gay man who's in the closet might be afraid of getting outed for sure, right? But is this man denying the fact that he's gay to himself? Unlikely, highly unlikely. I think gay men who are in the closet know they're gay and are not going to the extremes to deny that or to prove to themselves that they're not. I think they're going to the extremes to hide it. And by extremes, I mean marrying women, having children. So I'm absolutely not saying that there's no pain that comes from a relationship with a gay man who's in the closet. I'm absolutely not saying that. And I hope no one tries to use this episode as me trying to advocate for that. I personally think they're both wrong. I think gay men who are in the closet are wrong for using women as beards. I think DL men are wrong for using women as beards. But I also think there is a difference between the two. But in my opinion, if I'm completely honest, I think we're looking at one who's a coward, simply a coward, right? And then we're looking at a dangerous coward. And I think it's really important to say that, like, first of all, we should allow people who are exposing these dangerous cowards to do that. I also personally believe we should also allow people who are exposing gay men who are in the closet to do that as well. But I'm saying that about the gay men who are in relationships with women, lying about their sexuality and cheating on these women. I think any man, although I think there's a difference between the two, a gay man who's in the closet and a DL man who is sexually confused, I think there's a difference, but I believe they are both wrong in using someone else to cover up what they're not willing to face themselves. One's not willing to face it, one's not willing to accept it publicly. But either way, it's wrong. I don't think men should be using women as cover-ups for their sexual identities, period. So I think I'm gonna leave it at that, because I know I said a lot in this episode. I will definitely be talking more and more and more about this topic because it's healing for me. It's helping me process. It's helping me understand more and more what I've been through, the more that I share what I've learned. I'm really excited to continue posting more episodes. But one thing that would really help me is knowing what you want to know. If you're a woman or a man who's experienced a relationship like this, or you can relate to anything that I'm saying, what questions do you have that you want answered when it comes to this topic? I would really love to know, because I'm covering about 10 major questions that I had before I went and did the research myself after leaving this relationship. But I just want to know what questions other women and other men who've experienced this have, and whether there's anything I'm missing that I can cover and talk more on. So feel free to leave me a comment down below if there's anything that you feel like I didn't answer in this video about the difference between gay men who are in the closet and down low men who are sexually confused. Please feel free to comment and let me know your questions, and I will do my best to either answer in the comments, or I could even do a whole episode based on your question. So yes, Thank you so much for listening. I really hope that I, at the very least, gave you something to think about in this episode, and I'm looking forward to speaking to you in my next episode. Bye.